Hi class, we're ready to start our third science lesson. This one is called the life cycle of a frog. So I just want to remind you guys that some of the lessons that we're doing, you may have learned about a little bit in your packet, but we're just going to learn more about them. So if it kind of sounds like you know it already a little bit, we're just going to learn a little more. And it's super awesome if you do already know some things about it, because it'll help you with the lesson. So in addition with the life cycle of a frog, we're also going to be practicing our sequence words. So if you want to pause the video real quick and think to yourself what our sequence words are, just to remind yourself that we have been using in class for our writings, and then you could come back to the video and we could go over them. Okay, so if you weren't able to remember them, that's no big deal. We'll go over them. So the ones we used in class were first, next, then last. So that's just when with our writings and stuff, we would always use that. So since we've been learning a lot about frogs this week and the lives and interesting things about them, I was wondering, how do they grow up? So like humans, frogs go through a cycle of life as well. Obviously, they look a little different. So for humans, we are born as a baby, and then we enter our child years, and then we become adolescents, and then adults. Obviously, the frog doesn't go through those same cycles. So the life cycle of a frog is an egg, a tadpole, a froglet, and an adult frog. So I'm just going to show you my screen real quick so you can kind of see it a little bit. So it starts with the egg on the right side, and then it goes to the tadpole, and then it goes to the froglet, and then to the adult frog. And then the adult frog will produce more eggs. And then the cycle will start all over again. So if you want this image, I could definitely send it to you. It just kind of helps me. I'm a very visual person, so it helps me kind of remember the cycle in a way. So I'm going to explain a little more in depth each stage of the frog. So the first stage is the egg, and the egg will not go to its next stage, which is the tadpole stage, till about 6 to 21 days. So I thought that was interesting, because that's a very long span for, it could either be at 6 days it goes to the next stage, or 21 days. And a lot of the frogs or toads lay many eggs. So there's a lot of eggs, which I had no idea about. And then the tadpole, that lasts anywhere from 3 weeks to 9 weeks. And by the end of the tadpole stage, they'll be growing, they'll have their legs in, which usually happens between 6 to 9 weeks, which was cool. And then the froglet stage, or you could also refer to it as a young frog stage, goes to about 12 weeks, 9 to 12 weeks, and it's just like a miniature version of the adult frog. And then by 12 to 16 weeks, depending on the food and water supply, the frog will enter the adult frog stage. And then the cycle starts all over with laying eggs and whatnot. So let's review the 4 stages of the frog. So I want you to pause the video real quick, and I want you to think in your head and say there's 4 of them, and then come back and we'll review them. Okay, so the first stage is the egg. The second stage is the tadpole. The third stage is the froglet. And the fourth stage is the adult frog. So definitely, if you did great on that, great. If not, maybe just review it one more time or two, just so that you can remember, because I think it is super interesting to know about the life cycle of animals. So we're going to use, like I said, our sequence words, first, next, then, and last, to better understand the life cycle of a frog and to help us remember it better. So I'm going to want you guys to create sentences. So I'm going to give you an example using humans' life cycle. And it's just going to explain the 4 stages. So again, for the frog, it would be the egg, tadpole, froglet, and then adult frog. So, so I'm just going to give you the example with a child or a human. So I would write, first the baby is born. Next, the baby turns into a child. Then the child turns into an adolescent. Last, the child turns into an adult. So do you see how I took each? So the first, when I wrote first, it was the first stage. I wrote about the first stage. Next, I wrote about the second stage. I said the baby turns into a child. Then the third one, I wrote about the third stage, and the child turns into an adolescent. And then last, I wrote about how the adolescent turns into an adult. So you're just kind of explaining it using our sequential words. So think in your head how you can replace these words to explain the life cycle of a frog, because obviously they have different terminology than humans. So that's what I want you guys to do for your independent practice. I want you to send me a message on Google Classroom of your first, next, then, and last sentences describing the life cycle of a frog. And if you have any questions about this lesson, just feel free to reach out to me about that too. So I want you to go do the sentences now whenever you have a chance. Pause the video and then come back here and we can review some things you could have written. There's no exact correct sentence as long as you include those cycles and explain them. Then that's fine. Not everyone's sentences are going to say the same exact words. So pause the video and then come back when you're done. Okay, so I'm just going to review some things you could have written. Again, just to reiterate, it really doesn't matter if it was the exact wording or not. So this is just what I wrote. First, the frog is an egg and has not yet been hatched. Because instead of born, they usually use the word hatched instead of being born like humans use. Next, the egg hatches and turns into a tadpole. Then, the tadpole turns into a froglet. Last, the froglet turns into an adult frog. And then the cycle would start over. First, the frog turns into the frog is an egg. So, that was just one example. I'm really excited to read yours. And I challenge you guys, if you want, to maybe write, maybe you could find another next sentence to write about. So there's definitely more stages to the frog, more in depth. So for example, they go through, you could go from the tadpole to a 2-legged tadpole, because during the tadpole stage, they grow their legs. So that could be a next step. That's just a challenge to some of you guys, but to add an extra sentence or two about the extra stages, because we just kind of did a condensed version of the stages. So that is all for today. It was a short lesson, but I just wanted us to practice our sequential words, and I also wanted you guys to kind of get more of an idea of the life cycle of a frog. So if you have any questions about this lesson, you could reach out to me or Mrs. Andretta. Have a good day, guys.